So you just got a new camera, you're gonna take it out and shred some pow with your... So you just got a new camera... So... La 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 la. So, you just got a new camera, you're out shredding some pow with the bras, and your battery dies, and your host. Not really. Greetings and salutations, everybody. I am Scojo in 360. Welcome to the podcast. Now, it is the 360 Community Podcast, but what I'm talking about today applies to traditional video. It applies to cell phones, to photography, to 360 video. It applies to everything. Let's rock. Now, what I'm going to do in this podcast is kind of break down the science in terms you can easily understand, and then give you some tried and true tips on how to not get screwed when you're out in the cold weather. Now, first, let me tell you, I learned the hard way on this. I was a TV meteorologist in Anchorage, Alaska for 5 years. And for several winters, I was basically paid to go out and do winter adventures. But at the time, this was pre-cell phone video. Yes, I'm not old. And so all I had was this little flip camera. They were about this big, and they shot 720 HD. But they were awesome because they were the first really portable video cameras to ever hit the market. So it really expanded my ability to go out and do adventures without having to take either a cameraman or a huge camera. And one of the adventures that I did was 4 days shooting video on the back of a dog sled in remote Alaska. Now, on day one, it was 15 below. We'll title that day the warm day, because the second day it was 30 below, the third day it was 40 below, and the last day it was 45 below. And that's cold. Now, thankfully, I was naive, stupid, and lucky, and for the most part, everything came out okay on this trip, but I made a couple of pretty poor decisions thinking that I could just go out with a little camera like this into such cold weather, and I took a MacBook Pro with me. The good news is that they all survived the bouncing around and the cold, but there were a couple of issues. Now, the biggest issue was on day two when it was 30 below. I had two cameras. That was my one smart thing I did. And I kept one close to the chest, and then the other one I would talk to and shoot the video while I was on the back of the dog sled. Well, this day on 30 below, I was pulling it out quite a bit and shooting some of the reindeer coming through and the talking to the camera because I'm so damn charming. And at one point, I pulled the camera out, I'm talking to it, and dead. That is like 2/3 of the way through the day. I do have my backup, but I am just now starting to think I may have lost about 25% of the footage that I was paid to go out and produce. I'm in big trouble. Thankfully, the good news is that it rebounded. When we got back to our cabin, which was 30 below, and we warmed it up to about 70, both the MacBook Pro and the camera came back to life. Footage and all. So how is it that my camera thought it was dead, but it wasn't really dead? Let's break down the science. Now look, I'm not going to get all super technical with the science on this. I want to describe what the situation is so that you can be where and how to stay out of these situations in the first place. Let's break down essentially what a battery is doing. What the juice is essentially a form of a liquid. You've got a bunch of ions in a kind of a soup. And, you know, when fluids start to get cold, they start to get slow. So basically what's happening is when you're shooting in a normal format and the temperature's not prohibitive, you're swimming in a swimming pool made with water. As it starts to get colder, suddenly you're swimming in pudding. Really, really cold pudding. And if you've ever swam in cold pudding, which if you have, please leave it in the comment section below and provide video because I don't believe you. As you can imagine, it's probably not that easy to swim in really, really cold pudding. So what you need to do is, A, try not to get your camera to turn into pudding in the first place, but there are some things you can do to save yourself. The first thing is to make sure you get the pudding back into water. Now, there are some tips that I've found work reasonable and some that work really well. Let's talk about the things you really got to be aware of. First of all, make sure before you go out in the cold that you have the right battery for this. Not all batteries are designed for pudding. A lot of batteries are designed for temperatures that are essentially 32 Fahrenheit, 40 Fahrenheit and above, around 0 Celsius. So a lot of camera batteries really aren't designed for cold weather. Make sure you have a battery that is designed for that. The second thing you should do is what I learned kind of the hard way is don't let it get cold in the first place. There are two ways to do that. One of them I like, one of them I don't. Let's start with the one that I don't. Now, some people like to put hand warmers and wrap them around the camera, and that works okay. It does work. What I don't like is that now you've got a rubber band, you've got something around your camera. It makes it very bulky, not easy to shoot. Sometimes it even, you end up with a little corner of it coming into your lens. So this isn't my preferred method. I know a lot of people use it and it does work. So if that's your only option, by all means, wrap your camera in a hand warmer. Now, I would highly recommend not just wrapping your battery in it, because what you're doing is now putting a liquid that is designed to get really hot around a battery that has a bunch of liquid that gets really hot. So if you're going to use the hand warmer situation, just do it around the camera and just be prepared that that's going to take a while for it to warm up. The second one is essentially my favorite way to do it, and that is just to not let it get cold in the first place by keeping it close to your nearly 100-degree body. I mean, you have got all this body heat that is free and natural, and if you get your camera and keep it close to that, it will not let the battery get cold in the first place. Now, preferably you want to keep it shut off and near your heart if you can, but the goal is basically to keep it close to your body when it's not in use. Now, of course, I know a lot of you are saying, hey, guess what? I don't have a replacement battery. It's not close to my heart. The whole thing's dead. Am I screwed? No, that's the good news. The good news is that you can do one thing that I really like and has proven to work for me, and that is, first, remove the battery if you can. It's so much easier if you can remove the battery, pat it against the palm of your hand, and then cup it. You want to keep it warm for at least a minute, if not even 5. I mean, you'll basically get more activity out of it the more you can warm it up. You want that pudding to turn back into water, so cup the pudding. Warm the pudding, turn the pudding into liquid. I did this with an Insta360 battery one time when I was out skiing. It just locked up, so patted it down, cupped the pudding. Literally within a minute, I already extended the life by about 10 minutes. And when you're out in the cold, even 10 minutes of extra record time is a godsend. So to recap, here are the things you need to consider. First, make sure you have the right battery for the right conditions. Not all batteries are designed to go out into the cold. Second, try to keep the thing close to your body when it's not running. You've got 100 degrees of temperature that you're exuding for free, and just let that camera love that 100-degree temperature. You will get a significant increase in the life if you shut it down when you're not using it and keep it close to your heart. And of course, the other tip that is not my favorite, but it does work, and many people like this method, is using the hand warmers, wrapping it around your camera. It will keep it warm the entire time. For me personally, it gets a little bit bulky, and I don't really like using hot liquids around hot liquids, but this is a tried and true method. Finally, if all hope is lost, you have your Hail Mary pass, and that is to remove the battery, slap it into your palm, cup the pudding for at least a minute to 5 minutes, and you will rescue your footage. Oh, one last thing is, if it gets cold, runs out of charge, don't try to charge it. Let it warm up. You'll be fine. If you try to charge it while it's warming up, you do run a risk at some complications. And finally, for my 360 viewers, a quick note that I took the Insta360 One X battery and out in the cold with the GoPro Max battery, and I'm going to do a whole video about that. But the short of it is that the Insta360 One X performed quite well, especially for as small as the battery is, but the GoPro Max ran for nearly an hour and a half. So good news for GoPro Max users. We are able to enjoy the winter. All right, well, that is all the tips and tricks that I know. If you have any, please be sure and leave them in the comment section below. I want to thank you for joining the podcast. I could use some more guests that work remotely and some more topics, so put them both down in the comment section below. Be sure and subscribe and hit that bell on the side because it feels so good, and you'll get a notification every time I make new content. If you're new to the podcast, we wrap up this podcast in only one way every time, and I'm feeling it.